We are reconvening after suspension to continue our study of Bill C-321. For our second panel, we're pleased to welcome from the International Association of Firefighters, Paul Hills, President of the Saskatoon Paramedic Association, who we welcome for more reasons than just his testimony today. Secondly, from the Ontario Nurses Association, Erin, Provincial President and Registered Nurse, and Andrea Kay, Chief Executive Officer and Registered Nurse. Welcome and thank you for joining us today in person. We're going to begin by inviting you to provide opening remarks, and then we will move to questions and conversation with senators.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with all of you today. My name is Erin. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm the president of the Ontario Nurses Association, known as ONA. I'm joined today by Andrea Kay, who is ONA's Chief Executive Officer and also a registered nurse. ONA represents over 68,000 nurses and healthcare professionals in Ontario, and we also represent 18,000 nursing student affiliates who are the future of healthcare in Ontario. And on behalf of Ontario's nurses, I am proud to speak in support of Bill C-321. All orders of government must do more to protect nurses, healthcare workers, and first responders from violence and abuse. Bill C-321 complements Bill C-3, which amended the criminal code to make it an offense to harass or intimidate healthcare workers. Now, Bill C-321 proposes to expand protections to include first responders, and we support these changes to the criminal code. As nurses and healthcare workers, we are subject to violence and abuse every single day, and it is on the rise. We provide care when someone is in crisis, yet the existing measures in place do not take care of us. We are on the front lines, in the hospitals, nursing homes, clinics, and in our communities. And when we work in teams, we are most often understaffed. When we work alone, like in home care, there is no one else around, no one to call on when a situation becomes safe. As nurses, we are assaulted, pushed, spat on, sworn at, and experience intentional needle stick injuries. I worked on the front line as a nurse in an emergency department for 20 years. And while I worked at the bedside, I've been assaulted. Too many times to mention. I had my hand broken by a patient. I've been threatened with a gun, machete, box cutters, knives, and assaulted with the equipment we use to provide care. I was kicked in the abdomen when I was 8 months pregnant with my son. My experience as a frontline nurse is the reality of healthcare workers today. The statistics speak for themselves. 9 out of 10 nurses experienced physical, verbal, or psychological abuse in the last year. 8 out of 10 nurses experienced bullying from patients in the last year. 9 in 10 nurses report feeling burnout, and this is up from 2023. While violence and intimidation is not new, it increased during the pandemic. Years of violence, harassment, and unsafe working conditions have taken a toll on the nursing workforce. In the past 5 years, nurse vacancies in Canada increased by 147%. More and more, nurses are leaving our profession, and as a result, we see unprecedented wait times and hospital closures. But we are here today because we refuse to accept that violence is an inherent part of our job. The passing of Bill C-321 is a step towards progress, but we need these changes to be publicized and enforced for it to be a deterrent and to reduce violence in our profession. We urgently need more preventative measures that protect nurses and healthcare workers. We need to see measures that address the magnitude of this issue and the impact that nurse and healthcare worker burnout has on patient care. Preventative measures that improve safety and reduce burnout include staffing ratios. And we reiterate the call from the Canadian Federation of Nurses Unions for the federal government to develop a pan-Canadian framework to prevent violence in healthcare settings. No nurse, healthcare worker, or first responder should be unsafe at their workplace or while performing duties. Bill C-321 is a step closer to where we need to go. We urge all senators to support this bill and fight for the safety of nurses, healthcare workers, and first responders. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. I'm going to now invite senators to pose questions and engage you in conversation, beginning with Senator Batters.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for being here and for the work that you do every day to keep people safe and healthy. And Mr. Hillis from Saskatchewan, it's great to see you here. Thank you for making the trip and for everything you do, and so importantly on these issues that affect all of those in your profession and first responders in general. And you're a frequent advocate and very strong one for these types of issues, so thank you for that. First of all, I was just looking at the wording of both that C3 provision that came into effect a couple of years ago, I think, and this provision. And one thing that I see is, like you say, Ms. Harris, it complements Bill C3, and I see that as well because the new section that's proposed under this private member's bill, it would apply to healthcare professionals and first responders engaged in the performance of their duty, even when they are not providing health or emergency services, because the C3 provision limited it to it had to be an offense committed against a person who was providing health services sort of at the time. So that expands that protection a little bit more. So first of all, I'd like to just ask Mr. Hills, could you tell us about the frequency of assaults that firefighters and paramedics face during their interventions? And do you also agree, as Ms. Harris was just referring to, that she sees this as an increasing problem? And if so, what do you think the main causes of that are?
I appreciate the question. It's a very good question. If I may, just before I answer that question, there's been a lot of talk about the definitions of this, and in some of our work that we were doing, we did some digging behind, and Public Health Association in Canada, I believe, has actually defined very clearly healthcare workers and public safety personnel / first responders in some of their codes in regard to the PTSD framework. So those definitions are clearly laid out. That might help some of you as far as your parameters that you're seeing in this bill, if it's going too far or not far enough. But I just wanted to offer that when you're speaking to that. As far as sort of how often now, the easiest way I can put it is early on in my career, I'd walk into houses and deal with patients and families and consider more often than not getting hugs. Now, when I walk into a house or walk into a scene or even seeing it emerge, there's more often I might end up in a headlock or dealing with that than getting hugs. And I know that sounds kind of trite, but it's the truth. Like, I'm a fairly large fella, and when I go in there, just my size alone deters a lot of situations, but it still doesn't stop it. And when we have people of all shapes, sizes, color, ethnicities, and everything like that working on our front lines, there's no discrimination now. Violence is happening at a daily rate. It is verbal, it is physical, it is pushing, it is intimidation, it is kicking, it is punching, it is stealing ambulances, it is threatening with weapons. It's all the above, and I've never seen it like I have now. As far as where is this coming from? Again, as simple as I can put it, society isn't as kind as it used to be. There's just a general lack of kindness and civility. There's a lack of respect for those in situations like uniforms or authority, and a lot of pushback in those areas. So that is what I've seen, that's what I've felt, that's what I've experienced. I don't know how we get back to a better place, but I think acknowledging that is a root cause of what's going on, and just general lack of kindness and calling it for what it is, looking more for hugs and less headlocks. Like, honestly, that's really what it comes down to.
Thank you very much. And also to point out that this new section that would be proposed in this bill, it also applies not only to assaults, but to the offenses of uttering threats to cause death or bodily harm to any person, so that is included in it. Any type of assault, including aggravated assault, and also unlawfully causing bodily harm, so that's sort of the parameters of it as well. And no doubt economic impacts, as what we're seeing right now. You know, life is tough for a lot of people, so that impacts as well. Also to you, Mr. Hills, how do you see violence is affecting the morale of your members? It's Mental Illness Awareness Week, it's World Mental Health Day today, and have you observed an increase in early departures or recruitment difficulties due to that violence? And is that a problem that you see in Saskatoon, or is it a trend that you see across Canada when you talk to your colleagues?
Again, and I think Erin spoke to it quite well. As far as recruitment and retention, it's getting a lot of airtime these days. Talking about the violence, we talk about PTSD. We talk about other ways that our job is eroding us as human beings. I was never prepared to be a paramedic. I am not the same person I am that I was when I started 25 years ago. There's a piece of your soul that's taken from doing these types of jobs. And now when you factor in the unsafe environment that we work in, where there's legitimately weapons pulled on us, again, physical acts, mental attacks, verbal attacks, it does wear you down. So I can't speak specifically to a person's decision that might be like, hey, I want to go be a firefighter, paramedic, and serve my community, versus it's probably safer to go flip burgers at McDonald's. Honestly, right now, the state of healthcare, and this is the first time I'll ever say this publicly, I would recommend people go into any other profession than healthcare right now, just for how terrible it is. And that's a terrible thing for me to say, because I need more people to come into our profession to help us. But it's a double-edged sword right now. I'm asking you to put yourself on the line physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and to take a piece of yourself and hand it over for the rest of your career. So I can't quantify the level that it's impacting, but it is definitely now more than ever a big piece of the reason that we're losing people and not getting people.
Yes, and that's so sad. Thank you.
Senator Prosper.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. Thanks to all of you for the service you provide. It's something, and I just want to. I just want to get some clarity on because what you mentioned is violence is not an inherent part of our job, right? Of your job. And I remember when I was chief in my community, and I lived on the community, and I would see ambulances and paramedics going up the reserve all the time, and I'm curious. Can you walk me through in both of your professions some of the thinking you have to go through? Do you have that discretion just to refuse service? And if you don't, what are the steps that's going through in your mind personally for your personal safety? Because what I'm getting is the resources aren't there. Obviously, if you're in home care or if you're out on a call, could you just help me in that regard and just walk me through that a bit?
Registered nurses have a regulatory body, a college, a professional college, and we have standards that we must meet. And one of the standards is a therapeutic relationship, and we are required to provide care. If we don't care for our patients or residents or clients, depending on the setting, that could be considered patient abandonment and could result in a suspension of our license to practice. Mm-hmm. So that is always hanging over our head. And we are taught, it is pervasive within healthcare, but also in school, that you put yourself second, that you care for your patient no matter what. And if the other thing that you will find across all sectors of healthcare, in particular for nurses, is that if you are assaulted, if you're subject to violence, quite often you're made to feel like it was something that you didn't do, that you are blamed for the violence or the assault. It was a delay in care, or it was something that you missed, and therefore it is your fault as the nurse.
It sort of reminds me of the saying that the client is always right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may, I think one of the areas that we focus a lot on is the troubled patient, the drug situation coming out of things. But we run into situations where people call, "My back hurts," and we get there, and that person, for whatever reason, or their family member or a friend in the house, is the one that now creates a problem for us for whatever reason it is. So it's simply, we don't know what the situation is. So as far as refusing dangerous situations, there are times where we know there might be a weapon on scene, active shooting happens, that we will stage for police get there, clear the scene. Still doesn't mean it's completely safe, but there's some inherent safety there. However, when I go into a house with a person that calls for back pain, and I get there and they have a 9mm in the chair beside them, or a knife on them, or knives in their backpack, that's something I can't foresee. And therefore, then my mind goes to, what am I doing not only to caring for this person, how do I maybe exit this situation safely? And I often tell the story to my students and new paramedics is, there's that movie Patch Adams with Robin Williams. Person's going to person's house to render help or care, to have a conversation. That situation obviously turns south, and there's an incident there that's very violent and unfortunate. That's what happens to us. It's not the situation necessarily, the drugs coming out from an overdose. We understand those situations. Someone punches me in that situation, it happens. But I go into a house and I'm rendering care because of a back issue, and all of a sudden I get punched in the face or kicked because someone else doesn't like me there. That's where the line is crossed and things are unacceptable. So it is such an unforeseen world out there that we walk into. We really don't know what call is going to happen and how things are going to unfold each time. So it's a level of concern that you always have in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Senator Delfont.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to the Senate. My preferred uncle was a fireman. I always wanted to be a fireman. And I've been an assistant nurse for 6 years in the hospital. So I like you all. I can tell you that. You are my stars. I know I was in the hospitals, and I laying in the emergency yard for a day or two, and I saw a nurse being punched by a patient in the face right away in front of me. So I know the climate is difficult. But do we have statistics and data about it? So, for example, do the first responders will call the police when they are threatened, or even more so when they are attacked? And the same about nurses. And is there a way that you have, either your organization, some data about the number of cases we have and the increases in cases?
Go first. Yes.
She'll probably answer a little bit better than I. I'll give you the frontline answer is, we're very humble people that do this work, and we don't often report these things. We do have come to the point where some of this is supposedly part of our job, because there have been situations where we've been turned away by legal Crown prosecutors saying, it's part of your job. You getting pushed down the stairs, not really a big deal. That person had this, that person had that. So I would say that has caused an issue where there's under-reporting and a lack of self-reporting, because we're just accepting of those situations. But I think there are organizations that are taking a line and saying, enough is enough, we still need to track these things. And I think that's...
We certainly have a lot of data. The problem is, as Paul mentioned, it is underreported. And when I answered Senator Prosper earlier, nurses do not want to report this for the most part because of the stigma, because of the blame that they face, because of the risk that they face by reporting it. I can give you a very quick story of when I was a young nurse, and a patient who could easily have fit in this room, would be unremarkable amongst us, who said to me, basically, I will kill you and your two beautiful children that I've noticed are out in the car waiting for you after your shifts every day. And I tried to report that, but nothing was done, Senator. Nothing occurred until that same person threatened a human resources vice president in our hospital. And then something was done, action was taken. So my story isn't unique to me, though. That is the story of nurses across the country.
So that brings me to another question. We amended the criminal code in the sentencing principles to include, a few years ago, as an aggravating factor in the sentencing, the fact that the person was providing health services.
Yes.
Are you aware if there's been more charges after that as a result of this indication of the seriousness that Parliament was considering threatening health services or attacking health services people? And if so, have you noticed a change or nothing has happened?
I can tell you, in order for it to be enforced, it needs to be publicized. Canadians are not aware of it. That is the first part of that. The second part is the fact that nurses are willing to take action and to file charges, but to be perfectly frank, they're being dissuaded from doing so. That they are being told across Ontario that this is part of your job, and just let it go.
Which is not, I agree with you. Thank you.
Yes, it is not. Thank you, Senator.
Well, that's exactly where I wanted to pick up. Thank you to Senator Delphine and to everyone. Mr. Hills, you said that you were hoping this legislation would be like a legislative Kevlar vest. I mean, I would like to wrap you all up in Kevlar, but the problem is that this legislation only comes into force at sentencing. So first somebody has to be arrested, prosecuted, found guilty, and then at sentencing, this would be an aggravating circumstance. And it sounds like it won't be very useful if the prosecutions aren't happening in the first place. I mean, Ms. Aris, you listed like a litany of assaults to which you personally have been victim. Did any of them result in an arrest or a conviction?
None.
And Mr. Hills, when you talk about, you know, you go to help one gang member and three other gang members then, you know, follow you home. I mean, paramedics work closely with the police. Do you get any kind of police protection? Do you get any kind of response when things like that happen?
We're a small enough community. It's again, one of those things you take as part of your job. And I think if I may, you know, expand a little bit on what I learned with the transit changes to the criminal code. So when transit operators got adopted in 2015, they were just recently in the Hill because they've had very limited to no prosecutions because there was a lack of acknowledgement and public display or sharing of the legislation. So and what we were told quite clearly, I'll be bold and say when this or if this passes, we need to do education is the next thing. So it moves from this room out to the public forum to educate police, to educate the lawyers, to educate the judges that this is an existing new piece of legislation that offers us that protection. We introduce it to our members so that they know to push for this and advocate for those that change that's happened for it to take enactment. It's going to take that first person, the second person, the third person to come along, and then I think we'll see more prosecutions. Again, this isn't to put more people in jail. This isn't to, you know, have that big book of defense, the criminal code, that's a deterrent already for so many things. This is about closure. This is about support. This is about offering Erin an understanding that when her hand got broken, that person will be held accountable. The gentleman that went to jail for 6 months, unacceptable. You're going to be in timeout a little bit longer than that for the situation that you did.
I guess the question is, I mean, and this is for Ms. Aris and Ms. Kay, what percentage of patients, I mean, I guess not all the assaults would come from patients. Some might come from a family member in the emergency room who's angry that their loved one isn't being triaged the way they think they should be. But I would imagine that a goodly number of these assaults are carried out by patients who are not compos mentis, you know, who could never be held criminally liable, either because they're in a drug-induced psychotic state or a regular psychotic state, or they're suffering from dementia, or they're, you know, on the autism spectrum and are lashing out. I mean, to what extent do you think, I don't know if you can quantify, if when you're doing your data, what percentage are mens rea criminal assaults versus things for which you deserve every protection and all the support of your union and your management, but are not prosecutable?
Mens rea criminal assaults happen daily in all sectors of healthcare.
So this isn't just like my
It
mom
is
with
not.
dementia biting a nurse.
I think
No.
that would be a misnomer. I
Yeah.
would be telling an untruth if I said to you, it is only folks suffering from addictions or dementia or whatever it may be. That would be factually untrue.
Okay.
Yes.
But you couldn't say 2/3, 1/3. It would just, is there data, or is this just sort of anecdotally you observe?
Anecdotally, I think we could get some data for senators.
I mean, I think that would be, I don't know if that will help us in time for this, but
Yeah.
I would just be really curious.
If you're interested.
To know for future public policy, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for all of your service.
Senator Soudard.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. D'abord, merci pour votre travail. Merci d'être là, Madame Harris, Madame Kay, Monsieur Hills. Nous, en tout cas au Québec, on publie des statistiques. La commission que je dirigeais, la CNESST, la Commission des normes, de l'équité, de la santé, sécurité, publie des statistiques dont j'ai parlé tout à l'heure. Je pense que vous étiez présents. Puis, c'est sûr que elle témoigne en fait des mêmes choses. Les chiffres sont au même effet de tout ce que vous avez parlé. Il y a une augmentation fulgurante à l'égard que ce soit de la violence physique ou psychique dont j'ai parlé tout à l'heure. Notamment, je comprends pas, mais au regard justement des travailleurs qui rendent des soins en première ligne, les soins de santé, les services paramédics, services policiers, services ambulanciers et autres. Et pour nous, en tout cas au Québec, vous mentionniez tantôt, quand ça fait partie du travail, on ne déclare pas, ben nous, c'est l'inverse. Si ça fait partie du travail, c'est une lésion professionnelle qui doit être indemnisée par la Commission. Donc, ma question était beaucoup tournée sur, parce que nous, on a beaucoup travaillé avec des gens qui sont en première ligne. Puis je vais m'adresser à vous, Monsieur Hills, malgré que j'ai passé ma vie à défendre les droits des femmes, mais mon Dieu, qu'on avait de la difficulté à faire parler les hommes. Alors les policiers, les pompiers, les paramédics, on n'arrive pas à les faire parler et à les faire s'exprimer. C'est le premier pas pour guérir et c'est difficile. Bien sûr, on a eu des dossiers d'épuisement professionnel, on a eu des dossiers de... Vous l'avez mentionné, les gens vont quitter la profession. Puis ça a des conséquences sur les milieux de travail, l'épuisement professionnel, la difficulté aussi de relation avec les collègues, avec la famille, l'irritabilité. Puis malheureusement, on a eu des dossiers qui ont porté jusqu'à des suicides. C'est grave, non? Et le premier pas qu'il y a à faire, c'est de parler. Et comme c'est vous avez choisi une profession, puis les infirmières aussi sont là pour faire du bien, donner des soins et être fort. C'est ce qu'on apprend quand on étudie, quand on a le diplôme, c'est d'être fort, puis de montrer qu'on est fort. Alors, on n'arrivait pas à faire parler. On s'est beaucoup servi des associations comme la vôtre, Monsieur Hills, pour amener ces hommes-là, mais c'est des femmes aussi là, qui sont dans ces milieux-là, à parler et à guérir plutôt que de s'isoler, parce que la majorité du temps, c'est ce qu'on voyait, c'était de l'isolement et une dégradation de la santé psychique ou psychologique. Alors, je sors un peu du projet de loi. Je m'en excuse, mais c'est un sujet trop important, surtout aujourd'hui, dans la Journée mondiale de la santé mentale. Qu'est-ce qui peut être fait en partenariat entre même les provinces, vos associations, pour amener les gens à parler d'abord, ce qui est le premier pas vers la guérison aussi?
Thank you for that. And on today, it's a very good point, and it might stray a little bit from the bill, as you said. I spoke a little bit earlier about coming to this job. I feel that I was built for this job. I feel that I'm a person who can go attend to the worst of the worst, see things that most of you don't want to hear about, and go home and be a dad and a husband. The reality is, over 25 years, as I said before, I'm not the same person. What I have learned over my struggles over the last number of years with PTSD and OSI was that, and to use a quote from a guy like Fred Rogers, whatever is mentionable is manageable. And the reality is I wasn't talking about it. When I did start talking about it, there was healing that happened. The problem is damage is already done. It's still important to talk about it. And I think one of the things that the IFF does, the International Association of Firefighters, has recognized in a very male-dominated profession, we do hide our emotions, we do hide our feelings, we don't talk about it, and that has led to significant suicide rates in first responders, police, RCMP, and it's not to take away from any other professions such as nursing or medicine or anything like that, but just, I can speak to what I know a little bit more. They've recognized the importance of it to the point where they've created their own centers to just treat firefighters, because we need to teach men and boys coming into this profession and in culture in general, talk about your feelings. It is important. I know men in my life that have friends that have never had a real conversation with another man, to the point where they shed tears, where they talk about feelings, where they're real about things, and that is a problem. So to kind of tie it into what's going on, I might be punched at work, I might be kicked, I might be threatened by a gang member, and I might feel I can't share that, or I can't share my fear around that, because that cuts deep a little bit when you realize, like, oh, there could be gang members at my house, or oh, that my house got vandalized. Was that from teenage pranks, or was that from something else going on? And that does play the back of your mind. So it ties all in together. I talked about it as a deterrent. I see it as closure. It is one of those areas where people like yourselves can acknowledge the fact that I need to be heard in the way that the violence towards me is real, it's happened, and having that person held accountable is another area of closure. And with that closure, I can maybe talk about how it's affected me, how it's, made life difficult mental health wise, or my colleagues. Again, like across the country, firefighters, police, paramedics, it is an environment where we are supposed to keep our feelings in. That's what I was taught. More and more, it's okay to have those feelings out. And these are forums that it is important to talk about. I'm sorry, I kind of went off a little bit there too, but I hope that helps. Yeah.
Thanks, Thibault.
Merci.
Senatrice Odette.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Vous avez, en quelque sorte, la sénatrice, posé ma question pendant que vous mettez vos oreilles. Donc, on n'a pas pris ma minute grâce à ça. Merci beaucoup. Merci infiniment. Puis, au Québec, on a 2 Premières Nations qui ont la même responsabilité que vous, là, comme infirmières. Là, on les nomme super infirmières. 2, Atikamekw, Wendat. Et merci pour ce que vous faites. Lorsque vous avez décidé de faire cette profession par amour ou pour X raison, est-ce qu'il était écrit « c'est normal, vous allez être blessé » dans vos cours? Et quand vous avez appliqué, est-ce que c'était écrit « vous allez être blessé » Pourquoi je dis ça? C'est comme si on normalisait lorsque vous demandez de l'aide. Et cette parmi plein de choses à faire. Ce projet de loi-là, s'il devient loi, vous permettrait qu'on vous donne plus ces réponses-là, même si j'espère que c'est pas écrit dans votre description d'emploi, là, mais et je sais pas si parce que lésions professionnelles devraient toujours être là à travers nos ordres, notre travail. Mais si en plus on peut l'attacher à une loi ou à un article de loi pour mieux vous protéger. It's so nice the way you're looking at me.
I'm a nurse with small ears.
I know.
Well, that's a tough one. We, in nursing, we need any protection. The question you asked about, were we taught to accept this
No.
in school?
What I was trying to say, when you decided to become, we say in French, super nurse,
Yes.
registered nurse, I guess. Was it written, by the way, your life might be in danger?
No.
Like you or you or you?
No.
And when you went into school or when you apply, they were like a bullet saying, by the way, your life will be in danger.
No.
Bon. And now you're asking for help, and this bill could be one of the many initiatives to
Yes.
protect you.
It is.
Merci.
I think it's not only complementary to Bill C-3, it would be complementary to other actions, other legislation, other frameworks that we could implement across the country.
And I want to say thank you, reminding us that there's other places that we need to act. Merci.
Thank you both. Senator Clement.
Yes, thank you for your careers. In Cornwall, paramedics are beloved and fight for attention, you know, with the police and the firefighters, right? It's tough. It's a tough gig. It's a tough gig being a paramedic. It's the public status is different. Union powers are different as well. So just thought I would acknowledge that. I also want to endorse the questions from Senator Dalphond and Senator Simons around the need for data. You know, as we make public policy, we need to understand who's attacking, who's being attacked, who's disproportionately being attacked. You know, I'm very aware that the nursing profession is female dominated as well. So these are all things that I think we need to study further. I wanted to engage with you, Ms. Harris, because you talked about those preventative measures and you responded to Senatrice Odette to say you'd like to see others. And you talked about a framework. I want to know if the province is supporting you sufficiently in those preventative measures, if the federal government needs to add their voice to what provinces are doing or not doing around the preventative measures. I support this bill, but I also think it's limited. And I know that we're going to talk about it outside of this chamber, and we're going to do public awareness, and that's part of the point. But the criminal code changes don't always do what they need to do, and some of the preventative stuff is actually more important. Could you speak to that?
You asked first, Senator, if the province is
I did ask that first.
You did ask that.
I did.
The answer is no.
Okay.
The province is not doing all that they can. In fact, the province is underspending their health care budget by billions. I'll leave that aside, though.
No, but it's important what you just said.
It is. There was I spoke about nurse-to-patient ratios and why that's important, how it affects the work environment. Not only is it best for patient care, but one of the reasons nurses and healthcare professionals are being assaulted is because of the understaffing. Because there are not enough. Because treatments are delayed. Care is delayed. Care is not as good as one might expect. Emergency departments are inundated or closed, forcing patients to go elsewhere. And when they arrive there, they're ill and not in the mood. ratios would solve this. It would mandate that there are enough nurses at the bedside to care for all. So that would reduce the incidence of violence. We know that. And also, it would impact those working alone. We see that understaffing is creating environments where nurses wouldn't work alone, but now they are working alone. And they don't have the ability to summon immediate assistance. They don't have communication, home care, for example. They are, and Paul would probably experience this. These nurses are out in rural areas without cell service, where the entire community has been on lockdown because of threats of violence related to gunfire, related to active shooters. Yet that nurse is out there without a way to communicate and without a way for anyone to communicate them and keep them out of harm's way. So there's a lot of solutions that exist beyond this bill, but this bill is a step in the right direction, as long as it was publicized.
Merci.
May I just add,
Certainly,
just
Mr.
quickly?
Hills.
I think to Senator Odette and Clement, there, you guys both, I think, touched on the fact it's like job postings. Right now, we're advertising, "Hey, come be a paramedic or nurse." Everything's on fire. You know, whereas this is one of those little steps that, when we're talking about being taught about safety in the job, is yes, now reality is there could be some aggression in your workplace or violent acts, but one of the nice things we can put out there is there's protection for you or acknowledgement for that. So it's almost like we need to start rebuilding the job postings for our professions, like Mexico all-inclusive vacation. And right now, again, I don't want to go on vacation to any of the places that we're advertising, but I think this is one of those steps where we can get in the right direction of advertising better for our professions and attracting more people so that we have more people to help us do our work. So.
We don't have anyone else on the list. Senator Pate?
Thank you. Well, and it's hard to say this, but having done the work I've done for the better part of 50 years, this wouldn't be my first step of a legislative move, and not because I don't want to support all of the things you've raised. You heard what I said to the sponsor for the bill, but because all of my experiences, the more we heap into the criminal code, longer, more punitive sentences, the less likely we see people held accountable for behavior because people lawyer up. The issues that Senator Simons has raised very clearly, and I know the people who end up in the system because of these, and all of the evidence, the government's own evidence, every party knows this, but they continue on this track of create more criminal law as though that will deter or change behavior, instead of exactly the things you talk about, what we know will do it, which is more supports, more resources, especially people. And I'd say that in schools, in hospitals, in the community. And so we keep adding on to the criminal code and avoid doing what we know really needs to be done. And so, those of you who don't know me, my colleagues do, I'll be completely transparent. I don't think this is the way to go. And I worry every time we do this that we just feed a perception that this will solve the problem. And 2 years from now, I have no doubt it'll pass. That's not the issue. And do I think it's a bad thing to be protected? Of course. Well, I shouldn't say of course not. Most people know me know I would say of course not. But do I think it will achieve it? Not in the slightest. Because deterrence doesn't come from what the law says. We provide supports for people, and you're less likely to see this behavior in the first place. And Mr. Hills, you talked about it. I mean, whether it's working with nurses, whether it's working with social workers, whether it's working with my neighbor paramedic, whether it's others, this is an issue right across the board that we're not taking care of people, and the results we're seeing are what you're experiencing on the front line. And
Is there a question in there?
if I'm saying something you disagree with, I'd like to hear.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
I think it's not a disagreement, and I don't think it's an either or. I think it is an and. I would look at it as in a situation from the lens maybe closure. If you can maybe come on side with us and talk about closure for the person, and I'll use Erin if I may again without bringing up that if it's her hand. Let's say it's a unprovoked family member broke her hand. Do you think that this would be an opportunity for allowing some closure for her for it to be recognized that she was taken care of, less maybe what needs to be dealt with that person? Is that?
I think that the charges should have been laid in the first place. I don't think you need this provision to do that. It's all of the other issues you've talked about, the reluctance of the profession to take it seriously, the expectation that you'll take things that are
Literally take it on the chin.
Yeah, and so if I thought this law would change that, I'd be the first one in line to support it. That's not the issue. It's that I think it allows us to all feel better, no offense to my colleagues, all feel better when we're taking this step and forget the other stuff that we're not doing.
But I believe it's not an and/or. I do believe that it would be the final safety net. It would be after we implement everything else that was suggested here. But to be perfectly frank, Senator, this has been going on for a long time in Canada. And we've known that we need more resources. We know that we just need to spend what is budgeted. We know this. Yet it continues year after year after year, government after government.
I agree.
Yes. So this would be an important first step, something
On that
achievable.
I disagree, but that's not should not be heard as not supporting what you're trying to do.
Thank you both. I think that concludes our rounds of questioning, and I want to just say this is the testimony is depressing. I think it fills all of us with admiration for the work that you and your colleagues do, probably more than we had before you came in the room. The question seems to me to be, how do we come to the aid of the Good Samaritans? Ironic that has to be done. This is a step. I think there's a powerful argument that we're taking a step at the very tail end, I think a point that Senator Pate is making, and it's not. It could have some assistance, but it's really, it's not preventative in its most obvious and direct ways, and those are the kinds of anxieties that I think you've expressed, and you've heard, I think, from some of the folks around the table, none of whom have spoken against the bill, but would certainly like to see more. So I want to just, if I may, bring this to conclusion. Thank you, each of you, for coming and speaking to us, answering our questions as frankly and as openly as you have, assisting us greatly in understanding the terrain within which this bill would operate. Mr. Hills, Ms. Harris, Ms. Kay, thank you very much. Your personal physical presence here is a further endorsement of the message you're conveying to us about how important this is for you and your colleagues in your professions. I wanted to thank you very much for that. I wanted to thank senators for the way in which you have engaged with our witnesses on some really difficult questions, and also to all of you, since this will be our last meeting this week, I want to wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving. Our intention, subject to developments, is that we would continue our study of this bill when we return after the Thanksgiving break, and the steering group is working out specific plans for doing that, as I say, subject to developments, any of which could occur as early as this afternoon or evening. But thank you all, and I'm going to bring the meeting to a closure. The meeting's now adjourned.